Hey, guys, we're sort of playing a gig here.
I have business with the slug. Come along. Jabba's been looking for you. If you resist, we'll disintegrate your friends.
Oh, greetings once again, Bucketheads. Mayvar Tigar. Welcome to another Boba Bounty busting episode of Mando Vision. Nargai Tom, and thank you so much for checking out this small, independent Star Wars podcast. If this is your first time listening to Mando Vision, we thank you so much for checking us out for the first time. And if you are a long-time listener, welcome back. Thanks for coming aboard. You're always welcome. Grab your usual spot on the sofa and let's get comfortable and start talking about some fun Star Wars stuff. I let our intro music run a little bit longer today because, well, this is a musically inclined episode of the show. You saw it on your podcast feeder. We are talking about the second episode of Star Wars Vision's Tatooine Rhapsody, a episode that has garnered many negative feelings about it. If you look at enough reviews from the people out on the internet who do those sort of things, I don't know if it's being hate bombed in its reviews, but a lot of negativity directed toward this episode of Star Wars Visions, and we're going to definitely talk about that. Because we're musically inclined, I wanted to give a little bit more of a spotlight to the band that is kind enough to let us use their music for this podcast, and that is Dirty Sweet, a band that my good friend is the drummer of. His name's Chris. He's a great guy, and he was kind enough to give me his blessing to use their songs, not only on this podcast, on Mandovision, but on the other podcasts I do. The Tomcast podcast, we use another song of theirs for that show as well. And Chris is a drummer extraordinaire, and so I kind of want to give a little shout out to him, since we'll be talking about the music of this episode a little bit. We're not going to go deep into the music of this episode, but again, it's there. It's something we're going to talk about because, I mean, this other... Okay, if you're not going to look back to the Star Wars holiday special from the 70s, where there were musical numbers that are not remembered fondly, this is probably the most musical episode of Star Wars we've seen since then, since the 70s. So yeah, think about that one. All right, we're going to get into the show proper in a minute, but let's get the particulars out of the way. Let's do our thing here real quick. Remember to reach out to us. The best way to reach out to us is on social media at Mando_Vision, Twitter and Instagram. Please, by all means, email the show, MandoVisionTom, MandoVisionTom@gmail.com. I know I said it a little fast that first time, but MandoVisionTom@gmail.com. Reach out with your long emails, long-form conversations you want to have, and we'll get into it. Please be sure you're liking, subscribing, and sharing the show with all the other Mandalorians in your covert. And if you're on Apple Podcasts and you have the time or the inclination, one of the easiest ways to help the show out is by giving sweet 5-star reviews. They are the blue milk of the podcasting universe, so we need their help. They help the small independent shows like us stand out, not get lost in the shuffle, or too overwhelmed by all the celebrities that now have podcasts these days. Anyways, all right, like I said, we're going to get into the second episode of Star Wars Visions, Tatooine Rhapsody, on the other side. But you know what time it is. You know what you got to do first. Let's get it on. Let's do it. It's time. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
Stop!
You really want to do this?
This is Star Wars Visions number 2, Tatooine Rhapsody from Studio Colorido. It is directed by Taku Kimura, written by Yasumi Adarashi, and our plot for for this installment is a band with big dreams must save one of their own from Jabba the Hutt and Boba the Fett. You know what I'm trying to say. we have a very interesting cast for this week's episode. God, I keep saying this week's episode. I'm very used to doing our Clone Wars reviews, so I hope you will please forgive me for some of my misspeaks here, my missteps in speaking the English language. Joseph Gordon-Levitt Joseph Gordon-Levitt plays Jay. Bobby Moynihan is Geezer. Mark Thompson is Lan, and some additional voices. Shelby Young is K344, and of course Tamura Morrison is Boba Fett. And obviously we are the Mandovision podcast. We used clips of Tamura Morrison as Boba Fett because Boba Fett's on the screen. We're going to be excited about it, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the news that came out. I'm imagining you'll be listening to this episode on Friday or shortly thereafter. We are recording this on Wednesday. Some news dropped today. We're going to talk about that at the end of the show because, again, we have to talk about this episode. This is probably the least liked episode from Star Wars Visions thus far. It has a ton of negative reviews towards it. Right now, as we're recording on IMDb, it's rated a 5.4 out of 10 with 2,772 reviews, and a great many of them are 1 star. And I don't think you can give 0 stars because it sounds like a lot of these people, their reviews that I read, they would give it 0 stars. They had 0 interest, 0. I don't know if I want to use the word understanding, but they were not welcoming of this. A lot of the reviews said the same thing. This is not Star Wars. This has no place in Star Wars. A lot of reviews said it was also a kiddie episode, and therefore that devalues it in their minds as well. And I don't. First of all, I don't understand why being a kids episode is a bad thing. Star Wars is inherently for children. Again, inherently. We are, many of us, especially the listenership of this podcast, are grown adults. But we love Star Wars, and we know Star Wars can be bold and sophisticated and tell layered and complex stories. But by and large, it's still fairy tales. It's still mythology. And that's for everyone. And as we say on this podcast a lot, at least I try to say, and I try to remind everyone, that Star Wars is for everyone. And that's not just everyone who's above the age of 25 and under 75. No. It is for everyone, all ages, all walks of life. Star Wars is for everyone. If you go to Disneyland or Disney World and you go to Batuu to see the Millennium Falcon, to ride the rides, I guarantee you there are children there. So reducing this episode to a kiddie episode is and I was using finger quotes there around kiddie. I think that is their way of devaluing the episode. And I think that's unfair. I think that's unfortunate because, listen, I mean, it's not my favorite episode. There are many things in this episode that I'm like, I don't like that very much. I'm not into that. I'm not down with that necessarily. But then you remember, and then you take into consideration, this isn't canon. This is for fun. This is for fun. Like, if this was like a movie, one of the Skywalker trilogy a movie in the Skywalker saga, and a Hutt comes out with long hair strumming a bass guitar, I might have some more overt reservations about seeing that on a screen in the quote unquote canonical universe that exists out there. But this is for fun. This is make believe. This is the Star Wars universe through a different lens, being interpreted by different people, different creative people who wanted to tell a fun little story about a former Padawan who comes across a outcast Hutt who is trying to start a emo pop punk band, and this Padawan, again, this is in the days of Order 66, on the run from the newly established Empire, joins up and becomes the lead singer and grows his hair out and learns how to play guitar, and and it's inherently silly, it's inherently ridiculous, but it's fun. And this story, another criticism in a lot of the reviews are that this episode has no plot. There's no story in this episode. It's okay. It's a 10-minute short, basically, and the plot of the story is this Hutt has gone against Jabba, and Boba Fett has been dispatched to bring him back to Jabba the Hutt because after refusing his responsibilities, Jabba's going to execute him. But this Hutt has this dream to pursue, and he wants to be a rock star, and he wants to have a rock band, and he's chasing that dream. And I don't think stories about people chasing their dreams is a bad thing. I think that's inherently a strong story. That's what many stories are about. And the underlying theme of the story is the friendship that's forged within this band and the lengths that the band goes to help their friend and fellow bandmate Geezer get back to, get his life back, return him to the band, and cut a deal with Jabba that proffers everybody. And yeah, Bobby Moynihan plays Geezer, and he's one of those voices you can easily recognize. Joseph Gordon-Levitt is it's. At first, I didn't catch that it was Joseph Gordon-Levitt, but as you kind of listen to it play out more, you do get there. At least I did. I finally got there before the credits rolled, and I was like, oh, that's okay. That's Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I got this now. The animation in this episode is fun. It's a very anime style that I think many of us are familiar with. It sort of actually reminded me of the videos for the Gorillaz, if you remember that band from the late 90s, early 2000s, and so a very familiar art style. I think it looked really good. I thought the animation in this episode is really nice, really strong. Really, the colors pop. We're introduced to some new droids, some new alien species, but we see a lot of familiarity. This is also one of the only episodes that has, actually, this is the only episode that has familiar characters from the original trilogy. We have Boba Fett, we have Jabba the Hutt, we have Bib Fortuna, and then we see other species that we do recognize. We have Nikto and Weequay, and a couple familiar droids, and there's some Rhodians, and so this is the one that maybe has the most direct connections to the movie, but again, it's not canon. It's a fun make believe made up story. This is an anthology series that has no connection to anything. It is just Star Wars interpreted through a new lens, and I know I'm saying that phrase a lot, but I feel like it's the best description, and it's something that more people need to keep in mind. I think if you just go into this entire Visions series, this episode in particular, but in Visions in general, if you just go into it and you're going to sit down and watch a 15-ish minute episode with no expectations, I think you're going to come out having a relatively nice time with the episode. They're fun. They're tonally different. Each episode is very unique, and this episode perhaps the most unique. I think the biggest thing hurting this episode is that unfortunately it is the second one in the series. It is the one that comes after the duel, which by and large is still the highest rated episode of the series and is a very strong dramatic piece. And then you have this much lighter fare about a sort of Star Wars emo pop punk band. And I think that it's a bit of an anomaly in a series that by and large is a bit more dramatic, is a bit more Star Warsy, if that makes any sense. This is a very unique episode of Visions, but I think it's getting blasted because it's coming after the duel, and it is a huge shift in tone from the duel, and I think people are knocking it for that. But I don't think this is the worst episode of the series, and I use that word. I try to use that word very carefully because I don't want to get into a position where we are trying to rank the episodes of Visions. I think there's one, each one's going to be different for everybody, and that's the way it should be. And if you don't like this episode, I'm not saying you're wrong. Don't like the episode for whatever reason. You hate the music, you hate the animation, it's not your style, it's not for you. You don't like the story. That's okay. Remember, another thing we advocate for in the show is everyone's opinion is welcome here. It's not just all about me and my opinion. I'm sharing my opinion with you all because I want to encourage a conversation. I want to encourage a dialogue. And if you don't like this episode, you are not alone. You are the overwhelming majority of people out there who doesn't like this episode, this Tatooine Rhapsody. But let's talk about why. Is it just because you're against Visions, or is it because there's something that's you don't care for, and that's okay? That's okay. I'm just telling you why I think it's okay to like this episode of of the show. Again, a lot of critics about the music, about the sort of emo band kind of vibe that the band's putting off. And maybe I just have a soft spot for emo, poppy, punky bands. I didn't have any problems with the music at all. I sort of, again, I sort of liked this episode. It was not what I expected. It's a little silly. It's a little goofy. It starts off, with Jay, the Joseph Gordon-Levitt voice character. He's a Padawan. He's on the run from Order 66, and he comes crashing down into Geezer's band, and this is how they meet. And then we catch up to the present, where they have a gig on a planet, and their set is interrupted by Boba Fett, who is tracking down Geezer, who we find out is a Hutt on the run from Jabba the Hutt. Because for various reasons, we get enlightened a little bit later that Geezer has shirked his responsibilities to Jabba so that he can pursue his dream of being a intergalactic rock star, and who could fault him for that? Eventually, Boba Fett catches up with everybody, despite a skirmish in which they initially escape. Boba Fett always gets his bounty, and he takes Geezer back to Tatooine. And the band rallies around their friend after their little droid produces a recording of their first session together, and to kind of remind them how they all came together, how they all forged their bonds to each other. And they decide they're going to Tatooine too, and they cut a deal with Jabba to play a set before Geezer gets executed, and they'll get to do the one thing that we have heard that they have not been able to do thus far, and that is finish a set, or at the very least a song, before Geezer will be executed. And of course, the band plays, and they win the crowd over. They win over Jabba. They even win over Boba Fett. And maybe that's all things that bother people in this episode. They don't like the Jabba tapping his tail and beat to it. They don't like Boba Fett nodding his head to the music, because it's, again, quote unquote, not Star Wars. I think you're taking it too seriously. I really, really do. But again, that's your prerogative. That's okay, and you can disagree with me. You can tell me that I'm being way too forgiving for some of this stuff, and maybe I am. Maybe I am being a bit of an apologist for this episode. But I base that off the comments that I read that I think are unfounded. I do. I think people are being overly harsh. I know Visions overall has received some criticism for it not being canon, for it sort of taking Star Wars lore and twisting it. And again, I told you on the last episode, I'm okay with that. I think Star Wars lends itself to various interpretations by various people, by various artists, and I like seeing it. I like seeing Star Wars show me different things and do different things. And that is the fun part of Visions, and why I think the series overall is a success, and why I hope we get more of it at some point. Because as many episodes of the series that are more thematically in line with Star Wars that we know and love from the theaters, from the cinema, I like these little odd stories that kind of don't fit in, don't make a ton of sense, but they're just kind of fun. It's just a fun thing. I want more variety in the Star Wars that exists on our streaming platforms. By and large, we don't have a ton of Star Wars. We have the Clone Wars, we have the Skywalker movies. I mean, it seems like a lot to a lot of people, but if you look at the sort of diversity of the series, it's all kind of in the same chunk of time, in the same period. This whole Skywalker saga, and I get it. That's the lore. That's what brought people into the party. But sometimes you stay at the party because there's other things going on. It's not just you're hanging out with one set of friends. No, you got to mingle. You got to mingle around the party that is the Star Wars universe. We've talked before about it. Knights of the Old Republic, such a beloved property, such a beloved game. But right now it's an outlier. It's just people like myself who grew up playing the game and who still have an affinity for it. And we're kind of like the outsiders when it comes to that, because that canon has not been embraced. The game is getting a remaster, and that's going to be exciting. But show me more Star Wars. Expand the universe, and not just the universe around Luke and Leia and Han and these characters. I know I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, but one of my critiques, I guess you could call it a criticism of the sequel trilogy, is that I don't feel like I know those characters that well. I know Luke and Han and Leia and Chewie, and I know the droids. I don't really feel like I know Poe or Finn or Rey or even Kylo to an extent. There's so much swirling mystery around all of them, and that's I don't like that as much. I wish I got more knowledge about these people. So by expanding your universe, by diving into some fun things, showing me fun little stories here and there, at the very least, you're providing more depth to your universe. And again, it's not canon. It doesn't mean anything. It's just fun. It's fun to explore these things. It's fun to have sort of like a Star Wars multiverse if you wanted to go that route with it. I mean, it's a silly way to look at it, maybe, but I like it. I think this episode is not nearly as bad as people say it is. I think it's just fine, and it's like roughly 10 minutes. If you skip the intro and then you turn it off right when the credits are on, it's like 10, 11 minutes. No big deal, and I think it's kind of fun. Good animation. Again, I like the themes. I like the story of the bonds of friendship and coming together to help your friend out of a very precarious situation with a Hutt crime lord. And I think the episode is being unfairly blasted by many people. Maybe it's not your favorite either. Maybe it is your favorite. Um, it's just, yeah, it's entertaining, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with it being, if you want to dub it a kid-centric episode, there's nothing wrong with that either. I watch tons of kid shows and I love them. I don't have a problem with this. I really don't. I think that's a knock. I think that's an unfair knock against this episode in particular, that it's kiddie-centric. Um, Again, it may just suffer from following after the duel. And I got nothing for you there. I wasn't in charge of putting this together. It is sort of funny though if you think about how Visions is assembled. Episode by episode, 1 through 9, and someone I would imagine put a lot of thought into how these episodes were going to play back to back, after one another, because you have to imagine many of us were going to sit there and watch them all the way through, start to finish, episodes 1 through 9 of Visions. It could be, especially because when you saw the runtimes, they're easily digestible pieces of fun Star Wars stories. And it sort of reminded me when I was watching Tatooine Rhapsody in particular of the thought process that producers and bands go through when they're determining the order of songs on their albums. There is a flow to things. There is a way that you want to sort of have your album tell its story. Not like in a concept album sort of way. I'm not saying that, but like a rock band, it has to be very careful where it inserts its ballads. You don't want to start the album with a ballad. You start off with a rocker, and then you work your way into the ballad around the middle of the album when you got to slow it down a bit and let people catch their breath. Like I said, this episode may have suffered just because it came after a very action-oriented episode with the duel. And so maybe that's part of the negative criticism for it. But perhaps people just, they don't want music in Star Wars. They don't want to see a band in Star Wars, despite the fact that we all love the Tatooine band at the Cantina, which makes a little cameo appearance in this episode watching the band, which, by the way, their name is Starweaver, is the name of the band in this episode. So seeing Figrin and his Biff bandmates watching them on a vid screen was a pretty fun little cameo. And there's fun little moments like that in this episode too. Even the insinuation that old Ben Kenobi out there in the Dune Sea was watching this video, because we see a nice still shot of his house up on that hillside overlooking the Dune Seas. Really cool little homages here. I loved sort of the way this episode incorporates a lot of imagery from episodes 4 and episode 1 from The Phantom Menace and from A New Hope, especially with Tatooine, Mos Espa, the whole thing. I like the way this episode looked. The animation is really solid. It's anime. It's one of the more anime at looking episodes of the show in particular. This one and our next installment, Chapter 3, are probably the most anime to me, the most anime that I'm familiar with. But then again, I got no problems with that. I have so little problem with that as far as that goes. Yeah, this episode just gets knocked. It gets knocked around. I think it's getting a bad rap, if you will. And again, if you don't like the emo band pop punk thing, that's okay. That's your business. That's no problem. I understand. It's not for everybody. I might have more of an affinity for it because that's a music soft spot of mine, but it is what it is. So, what do you all think of this episode? Are the reviews on the internet, the harsh ones, are they deserving? Does this episode are they spot on? Do they get it right? Am I the one who's off base? Again, this is an outlier of an episode. It's just a fun little romp through the familiar confines of Tatooine. With this again, this is the only episode with familiar faces: Boba, Jabba, Bib Fortuna. You have a hut with hair, a robot who plays guitar, a three-headed alien species that plays drums, and a former Padawan turned emo band vocalist played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt. It's fun. It's a romp. I said it before earlier, and I'll say it again. It's a romp. I don't dislike this episode. I mean, we didn't rate the duel on the last show, and I think if I did, I'd give it like a 9, and pretty darn close to a 10. This episode, it's a 6. It's a 6. It's not a 1 like everybody says. There are things in it that I don't, I'm repeating myself. I apologize. I'm just a little fired up. I'm thinking about those reviews, and they get me very upset. I have a lot of, again, if you're a longtime listener to the show, you know this about me. I'm not telling anything that you haven't heard before. I just want Star Wars to be a place for everybody. Star Wars brings people together. Star Wars keeps us together. We shouldn't be arguing aggressively about Star Wars or saying something's not Star Wars or it's not Star Wars enough or they didn't get it right. We all have our opinions. We can all disagree, but we can do it civilly. We can do it cordially. And if you don't like this episode, that's okay. Maybe it's not for you, and that's okay. But I think the 1-star reviews are undeserved and extremely unfair, especially when your biggest criticism is it's a kid episode and it's not Star Wars. Complete your thought, expand on that a little bit, and maybe I'll understand where you're coming from. But just throwing out those statements, you're not going to persuade me that I'm wrong by thinking this episode is pretty enjoyable in a lot of senses. And that is all I have to say about Tatooine Rhapsody. Is that what you were expecting? Probably not. I think people thought I was gonna say some unkind things about this episode, but no. I think this episode is A-okay. I got no beef with this one. This is, again, not to get into a ranking thing once again, but I don't even think this is my least favorite of the series. And we'll talk about that down the road. We will get there, my friends. We will get there. All right. So yes, Star Wars Visions talk is done. I did want to talk a little bit about what news happened today as we are recording this, and that is that we now have a date for the Book of Boba Fett. You know this podcast is excited about the Book of Boba Fett. The entire basis of this show exists because of my devotion to the Mandalorians, to Boba Fett in particular, and yeah, we're fired up. They announced the date. They put out a sweet new poster. December 29th. I will be here. You will not be able to keep me away from the microphone after that episode drops. I can't wait. I'm extremely excited. And if internet speculation has any merit, we will hopefully be getting a trailer either late October or early November. I think early November made the most sense because if I remember reading correctly, that is when the next big Disney shareholders event is scheduled for. And like last year, that's when we got all the Star Wars news about the 4,700 new Star Wars shows that were coming to Disney+. So expect a trailer around then. But we will have a special Bantha Tracks bonus episode to break down that trailer whenever it drops. Because we're really excited. We're really geared up for that Boba Fett series. And we cannot wait. It is the dream. It is the dream that I have had about Star Wars for as long as I can remember. I have waited so long for the day where we live in a world where Star Wars is at our fingertips. We can watch it whenever we want. We just hit a button on our remote, and there's Star Wars ready and waiting for us, and his new adventures and adventures to relive. And I thought I was getting the dream with the Mandalorian series, following Din Djarin and his adventures across the Star Wars galaxy. But no. They upped the ante in season 2 by reintroducing Boba Fett, bringing back Tamora Morrison to reestablish the character's legacy, and now he's getting his own show. And I couldn't be more thrilled. I hope you all listened back to the episode I dropped a few weeks ago, talking about the War of the Bounty Hunters comic book series, which is very Boba Fett centric. And I don't even think I talked about what happens in the Boba Fett Alpha, or I'm sorry, War of the Bounty Hunters Alpha book, where Boba has to get some funds to pay for the repairs to Han Solo's carbonite that needs to be fixed, and he has to enter into like gladiatorial combat. And he paints his Mandalorian armor black, and he goes by the name Jango, which I thought was a really fun homage to his father and to his history. And again, I just love that character so much. We are fans of the Fett for life on this podcast. We will never waver in our love of the Mandalorians and the Mandalorian people, and we will be here to see them reestablished as a primary force for good or ill in the Star Wars galaxy. You always have to wonder with the Mandalorians, whose side will they be on? And we don't get a taste of the Mandalorians in the sequel trilogy, but there's a lot of really interesting creators involved in future Star Wars projects, and I wouldn't be surprised if we get some more Mandalorians down the line. Love to see it. More Mandalorians on Mandovision Podcast. Just wait. It's a great time to be alive. All right, we're gonna wrap it up for today. I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to the show. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you were okay with my thoughts. I don't want to come out too aggressively against anyone who didn't enjoy this episode. Again, that's your opinion, and you're totally entitled to it. But by all means, expand on why you don't like it. It's not Star Wars, quote unquote, isn't good enough. It's a kid show, quote unquote, isn't good enough. If you don't like something about the story, about the plot, about the acting, the voice work, anything like that, that's a better reason than, quote unquote, it's not Star Wars. Of course it's Star Wars. It says it's Star Wars. I don't buy that argument. I don't. And again, this is a interpretation of Star Wars through these anime studios, and I think they're providing a fun little, a fun new look at things, especially with this episode, of things that are familiar to us. And we'll talk about more about it. We got 3 through 9 left to cover, so don't worry. There'll be plenty more time to talk about some of these things in upcoming shows. So let's go ahead, close things out. My name is Tom. This is the Mandovision Podcast. If you are a new listener, welcome. I hope you like the show. I hope you'll stick around and tell all the other Mandalorians in your covert about us. Spread the word, spread the love. Let's grow the show. And I need your help to do it. I can't do it alone. And we're all in the same covert. Trust me. Trust me on that one. And if you're a longtime listener, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for doing a lot of the legwork for me, spreading the word about the show, sharing it on Twitter, sharing it on your social media feeds. I truly, truly appreciate that. It means the world to me, and I'm forever in your debt. We will have our own life debt in regards to that. And again, if you're on Apple Podcasts, 5-star reviews, great way to help the show stand out, not get lost in the shuffle. There are a lot of Star Wars podcasts. You took the time to listen to this one, and it's from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for that. And I hope you will come back, continue listening to me break down Star Wars Visions. And then we're going to get back into the Clone Wars. And then before you know it, it is Book of Boba Fett time. And, I'm going to be loud on that show. Get ready. You might want to turn your mic, your headsets down now, because I will be just, so much exhilaration will be coming out of my voice. It'll be excellent, excellent, excellent. All right, we're going to get out of here. I'm babbling because I'm just having so much fun talking about Star Wars, thinking about Star Wars, getting hyped up for a show that's still, 2-ish months away, 3-ish months away, really, because it's the end of December. Oh boy, can't wait. But we got something to look forward to. One more quick thought before we get out of here. If you were to have a Star Wars themed emo band, you could do a lot worse name-wise than Emo Fett, because I'm pretty sure that's what I'm going to name my emo band. Emo Fett. We're going to tear it up. I mean, there's nothing better than an emo band with like a 40-something on lead vocals and bass guitar, right? This is starting now. I'm a late bloomer. Emo Fest coming soon to a town near you. We're gonna play your favorite venues. We'll have sweet merch and eyeliner, lots and lots of eyeliner. It's gonna be awesome. All right, let's go. Let's get out of here. Thank you once again for listening to the podcast. It means the world to me. And we will be back so very, very soon. And the podcast, you know this, the podcast only ends one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.